Well, hello, you filthy bastards. Welcome back to the Vinyl Roof, the podcast where I, Jason, your unshaven, slightly pissed host, drag you through the skid marks of automotive history with all the grace of a drunk squaddy on a Saturday night. Today we're diving bollocks first into the rancid swamp of British engineering known as the Austin Allegro. Strap in, you sad sacks, because this heap of steaming crap is the motoring equivalent of a fart in a crowded lift. Unavoidable, unforgettable, and bloody embarrassing. Now if you're some poncy twat who's never heard of the Allegro, let me paint you a picture. Imagine a car so ugly it could curdle milk, so unreliable it'd break down on the way to its own funeral, and so universally loathed that even Satan himself would rather walk than drive in it. This is the Austin Allegro, a car that sums up everything shite about Britain in the 70s. Bad hair, worse unions, and a knack for turning good ideas into an absolute pile of shit. Let's start with the history, shall we? Because nothing says British pride like a car that makes you want to claw your own eyes out with a rusty spanner. The Allegro was shot out into the world in 1973 by British Leyland, a company so incompetent they couldn't organise a piss-up in a brewery, though to be fair, they'd probably try and fail. BL was a Frankenstein monster of a clapped-out car makers, Austin, Morris, Triumph, Rover, all stitched together with the managerial finesse of a blind chimp on a bender. By the 70s, Britain was a mess. Strikes, power cuts, and the government that couldn't find its arse with both hands. Into the glorious shit show rolls the Allegro, meant to replace the Austin 1100, a car that was actually half decent. Big mistake, lads. The idea was simple: make a cheap, practical family motor for the working class punter, but BL, in their infinite wisdom, decided to let a bunch of hungover engineers and a penny-pinching suits loose on the project. The result: a car that looked like a constipated hippo and drove like a shopping trolley with a wonky wheel. Launched on 17th of May 1973, the Allegro was billed as the car of the future. Future my arse. It was a car of the landfill, and it bloody well knew it. Production ran from 73 to 82, with over 600,000 of these turds churned out at the Longbridge plant in Birmingham. That's right, Brum, the city that gave us Ozzy Osbourne, and now this rolling disaster. They sold it in 3 series, Mark 1, 2 and 3, like a trilogy of increasingly shitty sequels. By the end, even BL couldn't pretend it wasn't a colossal cock-up. Fun fact, they exported it to places like Italy and France, where drivers took one look, laughed their bollocks off, and went back to their Fiats and Peugeots. Smart bastards. Let's talk design, because the Allegro's looks are a masterclass in how to fuck up a good thing. Picture this: a bloated, bulbous body that looks like it had been inflated with a bike pump, and a front grille that screams, "I've given up on life," and a rear end so saggy it could double as your nan's knickers after a long day. The designer was a bloke called Harris Mann. Poor sod probably thought he was creating art. Harris, mate, if this is art, then my last dump's a bloody Picasso. The Allegro came with the absolute wank stain of a feature, the Quartic steering wheel. Not round, not square, but some godforsaken trapezoid shape that made you feel like you were piloting a knackered UFO. Why? Because BL thought it was futuristic. Futuristic, my hairy arse. It was a pain in the tits to use, and every time you turned it, you half expected the bloody thing to snap off and leave you careering into a ditch. Engines, they were a laugh. You had your pick of a 4-cylinder jobbies, 1 litre, 1.1, 1.3 and 1.7 litres. That's powerful as an asthmatic hamster on a treadmill. The top spec 1750 version could barely hit 90 downhill with a tailwind, and it sounded like a lawnmower shagging a bag of spanners. Gearbox was a 4-speed manual that crunched like a bag of crisps underfoot, or a 3-speed auto for the lazy sods who couldn't be asked to shift. Either way, you were knackered. Then there's the interior. Vinyl seats that stuck to your thighs like a leech in summer, a dashboard that looked like it was nicked from the Soviet Union tractor, and build quality so piss poor that the door handles would come off in your hand, mid-drive. Oh, and the windows. Manual winders that seized up faster than a Scotsman's wallet in a pub. Luxury, bollocks to that. This was austerity on wheels. The piece de la resistance, the Vanden Pla version. Some posh twat at BL thought, let's tart this turd up with leather seats, a walnut dash and a vinyl roof. Make it look like a roller. Mate, putting lipstick on a pig doesn't make it a supermodel. Still an Allegro, still a heap of shite, just for the fancier price tag for the deluded toffs who brought it. So who drove this abomination? The great British public, that's who. God help 'em, the Allegro's pitched at your average Joe, the factory worker, the milkman, the bloke down the pub who was always moaning about the weather. It was cheap, about 1,200 quid in 73, which was peanuts, and it was meant to be practical. Boot space was decent, could fit a few bags of spuds for your missus shopping, and it sat 5 if you didn't mind rubbing thighs with your sweaty mates. But practical my arse, this thing broke down more often than Nympho's knickers. The suspension was so soft you'd bottom out at a speed bump. The electrics frizzed out if you sneezed at them, and the rust, oh the rust, it ate through the bodywork like a fat kid through a bag of chips. Owners reckoned it was lively to drive, lively like a rabid badger in a bin bag. Maybe. The press slated it, Autocar called it uninspiring, which is a polite way for a total bag of wank. Top Gear's Clarkson later dubbed it one of the worst cars ever, and he's not wrong. The man's a tosser, but he's good point here. By the 70s, the Allegro was a joke. Strikes at Longbridge meant half the cars rolled off the lines missing bits, like headlights, seats and dignity. Owners were stuck with a motor that stranded you on the M1, with the smoke pouring out the bonnet and a stench like burnt dreams. Resale value, you'd be lucky to flog it for a packet of fags and a warm Stella. Right, time for some audience participation, you lucky bastards. I've got 2 letters here from ex-Allegro owners, and they're filthier than a docker's armpit. Let's dive in. Letter 1, Mick from Doncaster. Oi Jason, you lanky git. I had a 76 Allegro 1300, and it was the biggest pile of steaming horse bollocks I've ever owned. Brought it off some shitty bastard in a pub car park for 300. Should have known it was dodgy when the exhaust fell off during the test drive. Mrs. loved it at first, said the orange paint made it cheerful. Cheerful my arse. 3 weeks in, the clutch shut itself halfway up the A1, left us stranded with a boot full of Asda bags and screaming toddler. Had to kick the bastard into a lay-by, where it sat leaking oil like a pensioner with a dodgy prostate. The RSE bloke took one look and pissed himself laughing. Said it was a terminal. Terminal? It was a bloody car, not a cancer patient. Flogged it to a scrapyard for a tenner and a dodgy hand job from the owner's missus. Never again, mate. Rather walk barefoot through a field full of cow shit than drive that twatmobile. Cheers, Mick. Sounds like your Allegro gave you more grief than a mother-in-law with a megaphone. Next up, letter 2, Sharon from Swindon. Alright, Jason, you sexy arsehole. Here's my Allegro horror story. Had a 79 Mark III 1.7 Vanden Pla. Thought it was a bee's knees with that vinyl roof and a poncy leather. Bollocks to that. First week, the heater packed up mid-January, mind you, so I'm driving to work with the icicles on my tits and a blanket round my legs like some Victorian tart. Then the bloody steering wheel, or whatever the fuck, jammed on a roundabout, nearly ploughed into a lorry full of pigs. Reckon they'd shagged me senseless before the coppers arrived. Worst bit, took it camping, loaded it with gear, and the sodding suspension collapsed. Arse end dragging like a dog with worms. Me and my fella had to hump the tent 5 miles while that shitbox sat there smirking. Sold it to some hippie for a bag of weed and a snog. Biggest mistake of my life. Should have torched it and danced round the flames. Bloody hell, Sharon, you've got bigger balls than me for putting up with that. These letters prove it. The Allegro wasn't just a car, it was a punishment from God. So, what's the Allegro's legacy? It's the punchline to every car joke in Britain, a symbol of everything crap about the 70s, strikes, stagnation and shoddy workmanship. They made 642,340 of these bastards before BL pulled the plug in 82, and most ended up scrapped, rusted or abandoned in fields like the automotive equivalent of a one-night stand you'd rather forget. Today, survivors are rare, enthusiasts or nutters keep a few going, polishing their turds like their Fabergé eggs. Good luck to them. Me, I'd rather shove a red-hot poker at my jacksie than drive one. The Allegro wasn't just a car, it was a national embarrassment, a 4-wheeled fuck you to anyone who dared hope for better. British Leyland took a decent idea and shat all over it, proving once and for all that when it comes to cock-ups, we're world bloody champions. That's it for this week, you glorious degenerates. If you've got your own Allegro horror story, or any car that screwed you over, send it to me at the Vinyl Roof, care of Jason's sweaty bollocks, wherever the hell I am. Next time, we'll rip into another motoring monstrosity, maybe the Reliant Robin, that three-wheeled wankfest. Till then, keep your engines revving and your trousers down. Ta-da, you filthy arseholes.